Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of What's New This Week in the World of Chess Drama. Of course, I'm talking about the ongoing feud, the ongoing rivalry, the ongoing situation between Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann. It's currently August of 2024. And since 2022, these two names have been at the forefront of a fascinating story in the chess world. Very controversial one. And people are on both sides. They believe what they believe. They support who they support. Now, at this very moment that this video is being recorded, there's a tournament going on in Kazakhstan. And it's called the World Team Championship. So people play together on a team. And Hans Niemann is on his team, and Magnus Carlsen is on Magnus Carlsen's team. And yesterday, Magnus Carlsen sat out of a matchup which would have paired him versus Hans Niemann. And that was a big story. And when that happened, Hans Niemann tweeted this. He tweeted, "If you aren't willing to handle things on the chessboard, don't even bother playing. Chess is the greatest combination of art and war." And I said cowardice, which is apparently not how that word is pronounced. It's actually pronounced cowardice. No, leads to inevitable defeat. Now, there were theories thrown out that maybe Magnus just wanted to get some rest, etc. Like, why would Magnus avoid playing Hans? That doesn't make any sense. Magnus is having such a great tournament. Well, today I'm here to tell you that Magnus did not play Hans 3 more times. The only 3 games, the only 3 potential matchups where Magnus did not play were all against Hans Niemann's team. Every single one. So the way that this tournament works is first you play in a pool, right? Not like a swimming pool. You play and then you seed yourself into the knockout section and then you play the knockout. And the knockout is 2 rounds. So in the pool stage, Magnus did not play Hans. And then in the round of 8 teams remaining, Magnus did not play Hans, and Magnus played every other game. So this is really incredible. I don't in my lifetime, and just for the record, see once again Magnus sits out. This was the group stage. We see some smiling there in the background, and then again, Team Hans and Team Magnus were paired this time, and again Carlsen is sitting out. Now, this has never happened in my lifetime of playing and watching chess events, and I've been doing that for 20 years, all right? Not to sound like one of those people that's like, I knew them before they were famous. Listen, I've been playing chess since the days that 8 people would play chess. Folks, in my childhood, I would have to sit like 10 minutes waiting for an opponent in some online portals. I mean, I'm telling y'all, I've been playing chess my whole life, all right? I've been watching chess events. I've been following top-level events. And I don't remember ever in my life seeing anything like this. There have been rivalries where people don't shake hands. Vladimir Kramnik and Veselin Topalov. Ever since the World Championship match with crazy, wild stories and accusations, they don't shake hands against each other. There have been stories like this. I mean, but this is straight up like, I think I'm going to play that guy in the next round, and I don't feel like playing him. And I did say this in yesterday's recap. Like, the winning... the potential to boost your brand and career and everything and all those things is really in Hans's favor. Like, if Magnus were to have played Hans 4 times in this event and beaten him all 4 games, can it be like, well, yeah, he's Magnus. Like, why are we acting like that's impressive? If Hans even splits 2-2, it already becomes a story. On top of that, I think he just doesn't particularly like the guy, and so he's like, if I don't have to play him, I won't. And there are comments all around like, why are people making this a bigger deal? Like, whatever. No, it's a very big deal. This has literally never happened in the chess world. I mean, but here's the thing. We are about 4 days away here in August of finding out whether Magnus and Hans are going to play against each other in Paris in September of 2024 in the Speed Chess Championship. And if you're watching already beyond that, go check some recaps out, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But I think if they're paired against each other and there's nothing you can do about it, Magnus will play. I cannot imagine Magnus will sit out in Paris. That just doesn't even... But I think here, given the option, he's not going to do it. Unless he's like the greatest troll of all time and he's, you know, he actually doesn't mind all that much. Now, that's the drama. He sat out once yesterday and 3 times today, and every single time he didn't play Hans. It's just so, it's just crazy. Like, this is such a wild situation. I'm going to show you some games. I'm also going to show you the games that Hans had to play Nepo, because Nepo is the board 2 of the team, but he has to play board 1 when Magnus doesn't play. And actually, Hans beat Jan in one of those games, so that's going to be fun. And then we're going to look at, the wrap-up of the tournament. But first, we're going to start with one of the craziest games I've ever seen Magnus Carlsen play, where he had a losing position against somebody over 600 rating points lower than him. So G3 was the first move chosen in this game by Semete Tologon Tegin. I don't know why he has a space in between those two names. I think that's just one word. And he's from Kyrgyzstan. Shout out to Valentina Shevchenko. And in this game, Magnus played H5. Now, Magnus likes to mess around with goofy openings in Title Tuesday all the time. Like, I don't know why I drew an arrow here. I haven't had my morning coffee. Knight to F6. I gotta, let me just get right on that. This is kind of goofy. And he even plays H4. So he straight up gives the pawn away. He just gives his opponent pawn odds. Now, generally what happens here in blitz games is you do this, and then you play E5, and you get your queen over here, and it's, you have what's called compensation, but the position is bad. Well, Magnus is Magnus, so he's just going to develop his pieces. He takes the center. Life is good. He trades off the light squared bishop of white, right? So white doesn't have a comfortable position. Now we have C4. And this is actually a brilliant strategy by white, because in this position, the best thing for black to do is to trade everything. Play knight F6 and play knight B4. But white is just comfortable. White is totally okay. Instead of that, Magnus plays knight F6, taking a calculated risk by playing bishop B4. But here's the thing. White's moves are very natural and very easy, right? So he stops the pin, and all of a sudden, Magnus is dead lost. Like, completely lost. It's an extra pawn for white, which, may I remind you, was granted to him here. And I mean, Magnus basically wanted to get an attack going in this game, and instead of getting an attack, he traded a bishop, and now a queen, and white is just completely winning. He has no weaknesses, and what you do here with white is you just very slowly, and slowly push the pieces out, and then you target this pawn, and he's just got a completely winning position against Magnus. What is this game? H3, knight to D5, G4, he pushes the rook back. And here you have to calculate this. You have to calculate knight takes E5. Because if take, and if take, right, now this is hanging go here, rook C6 and BC3, and I have a feeling that black saw this move and was like, oh no, I'm not winning. But he has rook A7. And if rook B3, you're just a clean pawn up, and okay, I get it, you're playing Magnus, so you think he'll beat you in a rook endgame down a pawn. So we have bishop takes E5, and in this version, he's still winning, but like for the moment, it's actually white who's just completely up 2 pawns. Now you don't want to go knight F7 because it looks like you might allow a lot of counterplay. Knight F4 check being, of course, the most lethal. White plays D4 here, F6, and G5, which is kind of unnecessary. Like, just retreat the knight. But he was worried, of course, about rook E2. But you are totally winning. I mean, rook A7 is hanging, rook E1. He plays G5. The idea of G5 is to get him to take. And now you go here, and you obviously are nearly winning the game. So G5, Magnus plays rook H5. We have takes, and knight to C4. But now, apparently knight F4 check is even the best move, but rook E2. And Magnus is coming in with counterplay, and all the advantage is gone for white. And suddenly he just completely collapses, right? Like rook A8 is no longer a threat because the knight is not covering the king's escape. So Magnus in this game had a little bit of a scare. Then, order in the world was restored, and he won. I think he won on time here. I think that's what happened. That's why there's no more moves. But, Magnus can win with rook F3 and probably just weave some sort of checkmate net here, like maybe B5, kick the knight out, knight E3, something along these lines. But yeah, that was nuts. Magnus was just totally lost, like with no life or hope in the position. It was like, but you know, all right, he doesn't lose to a 2200. Now, the games of Nepo versus Hans, these are from the knockouts in the pool section where Magnus also did not play Hans. Jan won. He beat Hans there, and now they have to play these knockouts. So the team has played 2 games against each other, and they played twice. In the first game, we had c4 knight f6, and then we had this approach. Here the main line is bishop b4 or d5. So d5 is what we call the reverse dragon Sicilian, because white plays d3 castles, and white is playing what black generally plays in the dragon Sicilian, but with the colors reversed. You don't have to know that. It's not going to be on the test. And here Hans plays knight d4. This is a move. Knight d4 has just one very simple thing in mind. If you take on e5, this is a pin. If you move the knight, you get mated. Now, in a shocking turn of events, that does not happen in this game, as Jan plays bishop g2 without any hesitation. And now black trades the knight. And I think black's idea is basically like, you know, I'll expand in the center, and I don't have the knight on c6, which can be useful for white to target in many lines. So we have this, we have castles, rook d1, and Hans now plays e4. It's a very common idea here for white, is to force the black pawn to come here. And now black has the onus of defending it. Otherwise, you know, white will play bishop g5, white is going to take, etc. Which is why Hans goes here. Smart move. And now we have bishop f4. So we're gonna play a game of chess around the pawn on e4. I'm going to try to win it. You're going to try to protect it. Hans takes and plays d6. Now, bc3 is a bad move. It's actually, I think, better to play this. I think the reason that he didn't play this is he didn't like d5. And the thing is, if you let Hans get this, black is just chilling. If you let Hans get this, I think black is also chilling. So the point after d5 is you got to play a move like a4, which doesn't really make any sense to me. I guess it's a waiting move. You also target this. Maybe you'll go b4 in the future. That type of... I mean, I don't know. b4 to me looks fine, but the computer hates it. So we have bc3, and Hans now blunts this bishop. So he has a very nice position, c5, d5, but now the difference is that Jan has more pawns, and the pawns can move. So he plays c4, and now we see the early makings of the black center falling apart. We have take, knight to d5, but I still have some tricky ideas. If f6, I'm threatening to take on c7 because you just opened up this. So bishop e5, bishop f5. Hans is trying to play on the light squares in case that is not clear to you, right? He's playing on the light squares, Nepo's playing on the dark squares. But again, Nepo continues to push with the c-pawns. The position I showed you earlier in the game, this position, if you go here, you don't have any more c-pawns. So even something like c6 is going to be very difficult to break through. You're going to have to try to use these pawns, and I'm not really sure you're going to be able to. But in the game, white does push those pawns. And now we see that, you know, the position will be quite delicate quite soon. Nice move here from Nepo. Bishop is hit, but the rook is hit. Rook's got to go, right? So the rook goes to a6. Now bishop c7. So now if you take here, I got this. If you take here, I got this. If you don't take, I got rook c1. I also might have been able to take on a5, but, you know. He plays rook c1, and a very nice and kind of clinical approach here by Jan. But counterplay is still possible here. Even though you are up 2 pawns, here comes pawn to e3. And he plays rook b2, and he actually blunders. Hey, this is a nice idea, and the best move here was just bishop d5. It's just a free knight. I think he was worried that after here and king f2, there is bishop b1 and queen f5. But what you do is you don't take on f2. You play king f1, and you use this as an umbrella pawn. In chess, that's called an umbrella pawn. It's when a pawn is in front of your king, and taking it would be too dangerous, so you hide behind it. And the point being, this is just a check now. There is nothing. Rook e2, it looks like you're going to get mated, but rook f1. This is the key move. Now, that's kind of hard to see, because you have to be comfortable with losing the rook. And then you got to win this position. And, you know, if you don't see rook f1, you think you're just getting mated. Yeah, rook b2 is played, and actually, Hans is winning now after knight to e3, which is insane. With 5 seconds on the clock, bishop f3, and now rook takes a5. A beautiful move is winning the game. You may ask, how is that winning? Because after queen a5, queen d4, you cannot stop the threats to the king. So Hans was actually really, really close to winning this game against Nepo. He was one tactic away But the game gets hectic, and he loses the knight in the center of the board, and now black just simply doesn't have enough pieces. E4, bishop c7, rook e1. You see all the pieces come to the defense, and simultaneously creating attacking chances. Queen back to c2, that's it. And now the king is safe. There's a pin, and it's too little too late. Even though the king's in the center, you don't have enough firepower. And Hans sacrifices the house. Nepo triumphantly putting the king in the center of the board, and there is just absolutely nothing here. And Hans Niemann resigns. A very tense game, and may I add, you may remember from the beginning, it was actually Hans Niemann who beat Nepo in a game that they played. So, you know, it's a thing. It's a thing for sure. And he was winning the last game if he found rook a5, queen d4, which on its own was not that difficult, but with 5 seconds on the clock, it can be difficult sometimes to register, you know, the right move to play. But okay, you know, here's another game. Hans playing his beloved Catalan. He's played a lot of Catalans. We have queen c2, a6, a4. This is a main line. And now bishop to d7. And the idea of bishop d7 is you're going to play bishop c6, and then you're going to play bishop d5 and bishop to e4. And you may think I'm joking. I'm not joking. Queen c4, bishop c6. And I think historically it's been like bishop g5, bishop d5, queen c2, bishop e4. I'm not exaggerating. Like, this is real theory. And the point is that the bishop kind of like blocks the white position. But okay, in this game we have bishop f4, and the point is that you're stopping bishop d5 because of queen c7. So yeah, now bishop d6. This is just uber mainline stuff. Queen goes back to c1, defending the piece over here. Knight c3. And in a lot of these Catalans, you really want to play h4. But knight d5 doesn't really let you play h4. So we have bishop g5, queen e8. You can still maybe play h4, but it doesn't really fit the style of the position now. It looks like white should expand in the center. So we have take. He doesn't let him expand in the center. We have a5. Now we have a little pawn dance. b5 here played by Jan. By the way, Jan not even thinking. c4. Now c5 played by Jan after a minute. I think he was trying to remember his lines. c5 not the move, but instead it was takes and takes, which is maybe a little hard to do with this pawn here. But that's what the computer wants, at least on a low depth. Bishop f4, queen e7, and now, you know, he's trying to hold this position together. There's a lot of pressure. The queen is going to activate. I mean, this is the problem with the Catalan, is that it's got layers and layers and layers, kind of like onions. All right, shout out to Shrek. Knight e5, and we're seeing this build. You would think that losing your bishop in front of your king like this is bad, but actually in the Catalan, it's been proven to be quite good. C d4, rook d4. And I think somewhere here something went wrong. I think here instead of knight e5, Hans needed to kind of chop down the pawns and trade the queens. So he needed to enter this version of the position where he says, my a pawn is good, your a pawn is weak. I have rook b1 ideas and stuff like that. Instead of that, Hans does it this way, and this is wrong. This is wrong because black now gets sufficient counterplay and the pawns are not in the right positions. However, it's still the Catalan, and you are basically under pressure in the Catalan for the entirety of the game. And yeah, we see that Jan is trying to defend himself. Hans just has really active pieces and easy play. Jan goes for counterplay, but f3, no counterplay to be had. Here comes knight e7 check. Here comes rook d3, and I mean, white's got everything on a right square, and all of black's pieces are on the back rank, except the knight. Here comes knight f5, looking for d6, looking for e3, looking for g7, looking for everything. And at some point, you're going to get low on time, and you're going to blunder a tactic. And that's what's about to happen. We are arriving at that destination. Rook f6 is winning on the spot. So we have queen b8, trying to trade the queen. Take, rook a6. Now the pawn has fallen. And you're probably going to win a second one. And this game was an amazing Catalan from Hans. Really well played. King f2, knight d6. And Hans ends this game up 75 pawns and going for the black king. Rook g7, knight e4 check, rook b5, rook d7. I mean, it looks like you have 70 mates here, rook d1, and that is not mate, but you are up a knight and 40 pawns. The amount of the pawns kept changing. And Hans actually did take a game off of Nepo. So, yeah. Now, ultimately, though, it was the ridiculously stacked team of Magnus, Nepo, Duda, Prague, Nodirbek Abdusatorov, Alexandra Kostenyuk. Like, it was a monster team. And they made it to the finals. and they were playing MGD1, which was the Indian-sponsored team. And I don't know why why are the GM titles misaligned? There we go. That looks better. And the only man to take a game off of Magnus Carlsen in this tournament is the man you are seeing there, Arjun Erigaisi. And these two are going to be playing against each other in the Speed Chess Championship quarterfinals. May I remind you that the Speed Chess Championship quarterfinals are a funnel into Magnus Hans. So if Magnus beats Arjun, they are going to play against each other and if Hans beats Wesley, so they're going to play against each other. Now, interesting thing here. So Arjun decided that the best way to play against Magnus was to trade his queen and play f4. Now, one little detail here. Magnus did not castle. Normally you castle, and then you play e5. This is the main line of the King's Indian defense. And the point is that if there's this, you know, you can play like knight d5, and the position's about equal. You have like bishop g5 stuff, etc. But e5 before you castle, that's bold, because now your king has to stay in the center, and now white gets a very big lead in development, and Arjun throws this out there instantly, clearly knows what he's doing. Magnus plays bishop e6, knight f3, knight c6, and just castles. Arjun does not engage, does not take anything. He just castles his king and says, yo, Magnus, I don't know why you left your king in the center of the board, because now you have to move it. And he does. But now f5. And now it becomes abundantly clear this was a horrendous choice of opening against a guy who loves a fight. Arjun is not scared. He's not scared at all. And the point here is he's giving up this pawn to open up the f-file to counterstrike. And then play rook f5, and, you know, he's not up any material here, but he will be. He will be. He's going to win all these pieces over here, probably. So f5, and Magnus has to back up. Yeah, Arjun's not backing up. I mean, Arjun is a Gotham subscriber, and I say frequently, about 8 times out of 10, the best move is not going backwards, especially for beginners. So for y'all, you got to go forward. Look at this. Arjun, every move, forward, 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 backwards, because literally going anywhere forward would have lost you the game. Somewhere here, you know, he's got a nice advantage, but he's got to actually capitalize. Yeah, Magnus here does something crazy. He takes on f5. Yeah, taking on f5 is like picking your nose just after you had a bloody nose. You know what I mean? Like, just leave it alone. Are you 3 years old? Let it heal. You know what I mean? Like this, I mean, we are going to have a waterfall. Bishop c5, knight e4, bishop f8, and I mean, ultimately, it's just Arjun just confidently outplaying the best player in the world, who admittedly played a little bit of a dicey opening, but always fun to see when the young guys just play really, really nicely. I mean, look at Arjun, just turning the screw, you know, just trying to trade the light squared bishop, repositioning the knight, targeting everything. The rook is going to infiltrate. This knight is nice, but it's just kind of I mean, it's just standing there. It's not really, you know. Yeah, but the pawns that black is going to lose, they're going to be felt much worse. Now, the one thing that Magnus has here is this move b5. That is the only thing keeping him alive. The point of b5 is that you open up a c-pawn. In endgames like this, when your pieces don't have a lot of mobility and when your pieces are outmatched, you have to find pawn play. Did you get that? So you at some point you're going to see Magnus probably play that move, right? Because Arjun is 3 squares from queening. He's just got to make a couple of accurate moves. And now here we go. Now, right, so Magnus is gambling here. He's playing the c-pawn forward, rook h7, but Arjun's just got his pawns are too fast. Pawns are just too fast. And I mean, yeah, Magnus is close, but it's just not good enough. You arrive on the other side of the board first. Knight e5 hits everything, king d5, and yeah, the pawn is there, but so is mine. So you have to probably do this, and that's it. I mean, you're not going to beat 2 rooks with a knight and a bishop. The knight is actually meaningless. I mean, it literally did nothing this game, and here Magnus resigned. Now, again, because Magnus has an absolutely monster squad, they managed to win the matchup anyway, and so they set up a rematch, right? They were playing 2 games against each other, and this time Magnus decided, all right, I'm not going to lose. Knight c3, this is the classical French defense, and now this move, knight e2. Here the main line is f4. This is called the classical French, the Steinitz variation. It's been around for over 100 years. And, you know, in this position, black chooses which setup they want to take. There's setups where you capture. You can play b6. There's also setups you don't play bishop e7. You can just start an attack. But yeah, this knight to e2 thing, this is what is called a prophylactic move, because you'll notice in the thing that I just showed you, there's a knight there and no pawn. Knight ce2 used to be popular. The point is to play c3 and f4. And not only c3, f4, you also play h4, and very often you walk the king out of the castle. So c5, c3, it's a kind of this is an interesting way to play. In fact, I would say below the level of 2000, knight ce2 might win you like 9 out of 10 games, because you're going to get an enormous space advantage and start an attack. So c5, c3, right? Now knight f3. Now, here actually white can play f4. So point being that like black doesn't have play on the center. You're too solid. And check doesn't do anything, because actually in many lines I can go king f2. I don't have to play king f2, but I can. And black can very easily get a losing position, like h4, and if you don't play fast with the counterplay, you play bishop e3, okay, because the pawn is hanging, so you should defend it first, but you get my point. And then you could start an attack. In this game, Magnus chooses knight f3, which is fine. a3, a5, it's a way to stop the advancement. Here comes h4. Now a4. Knight f4. Right, so both guys are making preparation. So the bishop blocks, right? Queen a5. Now Magnus says, okay, I don't want a draw. Now, as you can tell from Magnus's time spend, Arjun has actually outmaneuvered him in this opening again. And I think Magnus, maybe instead of playing like this, he should have played rook h3, the barbaric approach, and just gone for an attack, which, yeah, that's what the position demands. He tried to play it a bit slowly, because he did just lose. You don't want to lose and then rush in and then lose again. You don't want to lose twice. So knight b6, and the game is very tense. Now, finally, Magnus does play rook h3. Arjun plays h6, covering the king side. We have rook g3, g6. You had to defend your king. Now knight f6. Very tense position. Arjun retreats the knight from the queen side to trade off the knight. Magnus also retreats to target the pawn on h6. The pawn on h6 moves forward. Now he retreats again. You may say, Levy, you just told me 8 times out of 10 going backwards is bad. What is the probability that he would go backwards 2 times in a row? Well, I would tell you it's 2 over 10 times 2 over 10. Right? So it's 0.2 times 0.2. So what is that? 0.004? What is 0.2 times 0.2? Listen, y'all. I mean, it's a 4% chance. You know what I'm saying? Like, smart math. Big brain, you know? Statistics and quantitative modeling degree, and yet here I am as a YouTuber. I really hope I got that right, by the way. I have no proof. So I'm about to hype myself up, and you guys in the comments who are watching this on demand are going to go, what an idiot. Anyway, yes, it's very low odds that this happens, but it can happen. And by the way, he had no choice. If he went to h6, the queen gets traded, and then probably you just lose the knight. So bad idea. Knight e3, knight b6, knight c2. Bro just went knight g4, knight e3, knight c2. 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2 again. Yeah. Yeah. What's that? 0.0008? What's 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2? Did I say 008 or 000? 0.008. I hope I said that. Anyway, this has just turned into me flexing my quick math. Folks, ultimately, Magnus castles his king directly into the rook, switches the play completely, and just has to play on Arjun's dark squares, right? His weaknesses here, bishop e2, knight c4. Arjun is a very uncompromising player, but sometimes to a fault. And in this position, the most natural move by far is to take with a knight. Like, you don't even have to think about it. Arjun thought he was going to go here and play c3. That was his idea. Like, he wanted to beat Magnus 2 games in a row. Whereas the move you don't even think about here is knight c4. Yeah, but you can't do that against Magnus. And so you're going to try to blockade on the light squares and play c3, but he's just too fast. He's going to play d5. He's going to stop your attack. He's going to bring his king. And now you're not getting the setup that you want. b5, f3, and slowly you lose your grasp on the position. Pawn takes h5, rook to h6. The knight is hitting everything. And in this position, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. We have a scramble, rook e8, knight c6. We're getting into the position, and there it is. We're going to trade the rooks, king b4, and absolute domination. Magnus does not allow himself to be defeated 2 times in a row by Arjun. He beats Arjun, and he finishes the tournament with 2 losses out of, like, 12 games, 13 games. He lost to Report, he lost to Erigaisi, but overall a solid performance, maybe even below his actual rating, because his rating is too high. I mean, his team wins the World Team Blitz Championship. They got 2nd in the World Team Rapid. So I suppose you can say Magnus is now an 18-time world champion. But the bigger story by far, in my opinion, is that he didn't play Hans Niemann in the 4 potential matchups that they could have had against each other. Which basically begs the question of, when will they play against each other? And is it going to be when they're paired and he has no option? For me, I think it's just the fact that he had an option in this event not to play him, and given the option, he will not do it. But this has never happened before in the chess world, so that's all I have for you today. If you are watching this video in August of 2024, I've got a chess tournament coming up. That will be August 9th to 15th. Very exciting. But that's all I have for now. Get out of here.